Welcome back to another Convos with Clenergy. I'm really proud to have Rob Edwards from the It's Time Foundation with me today. Rob, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
It's been a while since we've seen each other face-to-face. We've been doing a lot of Zoom meetings, but nothing face-to-face. So you want to tell us a bit about yourself and the foundation?
Actually, there's a short, long story about how the foundation actually started off. It wasn't actually putting PV on school buildings. I'd had a long history helping a mate set up a charity called School Aid, which still exists after 22 years and raised about $7 million, which was excellent concept that they had, and I always had a bit of an inkling to do something myself. So we set up a program that was reasonably successful before we registered as a charity as such, although it was under the It's Time banner. And basically, because we'd worked with the schools nationally, as we went out to the schools around the country to say, hey kids, why don't you try and raise money to put PV on your schools? And the idea being, and that's 14 years ago, so it was a little bit progressive to be talking about climate change and such then, but it was all about that engagement process as well as reducing a little bit of carbon. But also getting these kids involved in leadership roles around sustainability. So that was the grand goal. We were mailing out the national schools database, 10,000 schools, and we got great support. And we'd set up a whole bunch of resources so they could download posters and so on to put in cafes and bars and that, whether with donation boxes and letters to the local sports club, RSL clubs and all of that to help them raise money. But the real kicker was we'd set up 3-form letters for kids to send to Costello at the time, Mental Block, it might have been Turnbull was the Environment Minister at the time, and Peter Garrett was the opposition spokesman for the environment. So they were 3 targets. And you might imagine going out to 10,000 schools with lefty teachers. They hammered them before Costello's last budget. And the request was really simple, is to say to the government that, hey, we're doing this, we want your support and match us dollar for dollar. We go and do it. So the last Costello budget actually came out with a dollar for dollar matching up to $12,000 as a cap. No one ever mentioned that the kids influenced it at all, but it seemed to be written all over the Cool Schools project. That's what we called it.
Yeah.
Then the Kevin 07 election was that was that budget year. Took to the election a project called Solar Schools project. Ours was called Cool Schools project. It was almost the same idea.
Yeah.
But they'd straight up committed to put solar on all schools nationally, which was just gold. I mean, again, we haven't got a skerrick of evidence that the kids actually influenced that, but it just stuck out pretty clearly, or we feel it was valid that they could take some credit for it. So the really cool thing about that was we became redundant and achieved the goal. Well, that's number one. Number two, that was an election promise that some schools did end up getting solar, but as those things go, that all the schools didn't get solar.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think that actually
won't go down that track. Never happened before. So anyway, that was a nice start, and we had those relationships and so on. So then, I'll keep rambling for a second. Yeah, to tell you how it came about is I then was on a dive trip in Fiji. It was the first time I'd been to Fiji, and I was on the. When you dive, you dive, then you've got to have an interval period of a couple of hours before you can go underwater again. So the boat took us onto a beach, excuse me, near a pretty remote island called Rambi. And I just went for a wander, as I do, and went into the school. And he's actually since passed away, the school principal. He's a lovely bloke. Alan Hedstrom was his name, Fijian guy. He said, I'll be with you in a minute. And he had his little old laptop and he was typing like crazy, and he jumped up and he ran past me to go and turn off this big 40 kVA generator that was running one laptop. It was that generator because it was donated to the school. And then he came back and I said, tell me the story. So like he's panicking because every second it's coming out of the school budget. And I just said there's got to be a better way. So that's how it all started, purely by coincidence, to actually put PV on schools in Fiji.
Yeah, right. Okay. So it was that in that moment that you sort of clicked and realised this is a much bigger problem. And I mean, How many schools have you done now? Did you say it was 26? Or?
By the time we finish this bunch that we're literally packing at the moment, there's another 5 partially done or on the way.
Awesome.
That'll be 26. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
cool.
but as you say there, you don't actually be aware that these problems exist until you're actually exposed to it. And that was just this really vivid thing. And you go, well, coming from our developed world situation, is go, it's a no-brainer. That's all we got to do. And so then it was quite a process to get to what we've got now. That's a reproducible model and it's reliable. Yeah.
And so you've been, I think, mostly targeting Fiji Islands. Have you considered branching this out into other locations or Aboriginal communities in Australia or anything like that? Or?
2 answers to that. The second part first, I get asked that one often. Why don't we do it here in our own country first? And I have a really strong opinion about that. If we've got government budgets as big as they are, if we can't look after our people in a very wealthy first world country, and not-for-profits have to come in and do that, that's a serious comment on our society that we've really got to look at.
That's a good point.
So then you're in countries, developing countries where, like Cyclone comes through. We had, the government was going to try and put some money into our projects there in 2015. Cyclone Winston came through and they just shattered. Suddenly 1/3 of their GDP is being focused to repairs on cyclones and things like that, or whatever the numbers are. So to your question, though, is I often get requests from the other islands, other countries in the Pacific. But the answer is no for the moment. I'll actually take you through a thread of how we got the programs in place and why we won't stop until we do Fiji. So the first project I did in that school that I mentioned on Rambi is I funded it myself as a proof of concept. And I thought, well, if it fails, we had a crack at doing something, for the greater good. So I put 50 grand on the table. My wife blinked more than once at the idea. So let me have one crack. And that was really a proof of concept thing. So I certainly didn't get looked after by the contractor in terms of dollars. Retrospective, we only put a little 2 kilowatt system in. But it allowed me to understand the concept and understand the culture and start building relationships. So then it took us well over 2 years to do the next 2. And that meant starting relationships. And the very first one was with Clenergy. And various other organisations, and actually raised a few bob to do it. Then to start shipping yourself and project managing and so on, excuse me, is a really complex process to do logistics when you've never done them before into a foreign country, and getting government on board to look after the VAT and so on. We've actually got to the point now where the Ministry of Education is our consignee. We get the gear into the country. They now pay the VAT for us and loop it around in their system, and they actually now pick up the stock and drop it into the warehouse for us. Yeah, right. And that took about 6 years. And then all the other stuff around that, and to be able to pick up a phone to someone on a remote island and say, look, I need you to organise an outboard boat for us to meet at a certain point, and that takes years to do. So you would never go through that process again until you've done that country.
That's a good point. You don't think about it, do you? I mean, all those little things. It's not like you can just pick up the phone book and find the guy on that island and make a phone call, and the receptionist answers, and yes, sir, that'll be done tomorrow for you.
I'll tell you a very quick, lovely story. It's a Clenergy story. We shipped to. It was the third project we did actually. Yeah, so. The logistics is to get it into Fiji, then to get it on a ferry in Suva, which takes a 16-hour overnight trip to get to Venoa Levu, which is the second biggest island. We get off at the main town called Savasevu. We drive up the highway, which is just basically a muddy road, for 4 hours in a truck, and we've got the truck packed to the limit with everything, and the cap mounts on your pole. What are they?
The post heads, yeah.
Yeah, the post head, right? One of those we put under the front seat. Right. And 2 of us are actually literally crunched up for 4 hours in the back of this thing, sitting on solar panel, in between solar panels and stuff. Anyway, we got to the end of that road, then we take outboard boats over to Kiowa Island, which is probably 2 hours or something, hour and a half on a little boat. Get there, unpack everything, and then you check your stock, everything's ready to start the next morning. Mm-hmm. And then we looked at each other and we realised that head was under the table, under the front seat of the car, the truck. So anyway, they all got mobile phones. So what can we do? So we sat down and we worked it out. So one of the guys in the management committee in the village knew that one of the villagers was coming up that night on a bus, and these are pretty old buses with no windows and stuff coming up. Mm. His relative lived on the road, right? So that relative sat by the road till the truck come by, got the head, the bus came, stopped the bus, gave it to the person. We woke up the next morning, it was sitting on the doorstep. So their relationships just take a long time.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's cool.
Yeah. You mentioned Clenergy, and we've been partners for a long time now. And I think there's a bit of history with my old man, Mario. Can you tell me a bit about how that all came together and how the relationship started?
Absolutely, and that's gold. And your dad and I are now mates. That's lovely. What happened was we put that sort of proof of concept project in, and had the good fortune of a business partner at the time played for the Wallabies, and through that we had a couple of those guys, and Peter Fitzsimons came and helped. Did a talk for me, and we put on a pretty flash dinner, and we raised a few bob. Excuse me. Not enough to do the two projects that I wanted, but always in my head was that this is a pretty good story, and you'd think some equipment sponsors would come on board and maybe walk with us. And the request to everyone then, and it would have been the request to Mario at the time, is that, look, I don't want you to give me the stuff. If you want to, I'm obviously not going to argue, which has been wonderful. You guys have given us so much, it's crazy. But if you can give us stock at what it costs you to produce it and make no profit, that's a massive step forward for us. You're doing corporate social responsibility, but it didn't actually cost the provider much at all, which is a reasonably cogent argument to walk up to someone rather than saying, can I have an inverter or a set of mounts? So I decided to go to a conference in Adelaide in 2010, it would have been, I think, thereabouts, which would be the equivalent of the Smart Energy Convention exhibition now.
Really? And it was in Adelaide?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
With that event. I can't remember their previous name, the Solar Council. Anyway, Mario was on one of the early times they exhibited, was there, and I just wandered up and had a yarn and told him, and he could probably see I was pretty wet under the ears with good intentions and probably a bit fallible. And he said, well, I'm back in for these two and we'll give them to you, and the rest is history. Yeah.
But you've also got some other partners, right? So I think in the past you've mentioned companies like Main Freight and some other suppliers. Who else? What other partners have you gotten? Who are some of the main ones, and what were the stories behind those?
Yeah. You mentioned Main Freight. Main Freight came on board about a little bit after Clenergy came on board, and you two guys are almost been our permanent association sponsors ever since we started. Main Freight were great. Similar thing, I was at a conference and deliberately went to it in Fiji. There we go.
Who's that?
Yeah. Life hasn't served me well. Yeah.
That's me in about 5 years. But with a beard.
Oh dear.
That's excellent.
Where
was that? Was that at the show? Or do you remember?
No, that was
that's at the office.
That's at the office in it's on the photos, Amir. I think it's 2010. Yeah, January 2011, I think it was, we saw. Anyway, yeah, which is excellent. And when you're starting out, there's two things about that, is that, yes, it's handy to get mounting systems that didn't cost us any shekels to do, but you've also got, you got two things. You've got some people having belief in you, which is massively valuable when you're pretty committed, but it's only you who's committed at that stage, and other people are getting committed. The other one, and is probably the Main Freight and Clenergy's maybe biggest contribution to us, is it's like if you're a professional speaker when you get your first testimonial.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's someone's backed you in, the other people will actually look at you.
Yeah.
And that was the most valuable thing that Mario did there, was to be the first sponsor. Yeah. We had people that took notice. So SMA became interested immediately, Q-Cells. And that's evolved to everyone now. They have a look at the other people. That's how the game works. And as we build our credibility, so we've got Simplify looking after us for batteries, that they actually give us some, and they give us fantastic pricing and so on. Anisys with the Outback inverters now, and ICS with cabinetry and all sorts of stuff. All were built on those first two relationships. Well, your relationship, then came Mainfreight. And without those, I don't know how long we would have struggled to get that first testimonial, if you like, the fact that someone's taken a punt on you. And then when we delivered, you guys stuck around, which then meant that, we got the foundation and people see us as reasonably solid. So, that's... Of that meeting in Adelaide with Mario, that would be the biggest payback for the foundation, and even more than the massive amount of stuff that you've given us. And all of the solar systems there in Fiji are mounted on Clenergy mounts. And I'll never forget that day in Adelaide, because we'd put this first sort of pilot program in. You'd love this, actually. They're mounted on Copper's logs with
Copper's logs?
Treated timber,
Okay.
treated logs, right? Dug right into the ground with shoulders cut off them, and timber rails down there with what would they be, 3/8 bolts bolted through and holding them together, and then they just screw down between with a clamp on the top and screw that into the timber. So I'd actually taken my brother over. He's a metalworker, engineering type guy. And I said, look, get yourself over here and give us a few. There's got to be a better way than this, what these blokes are doing. Anyway, and this is, me learning the thing, plus he wanted a holiday. So anyway, you can imagine my eyes light up when I'm going at this conference and looking over your dad's shoulder. There's all these pictures of these Solar Terrace 2s there, and I'm going, I want some of that. Even if you didn't give me a discount or give them to me, I would have got them. Yeah. And I mean that, I'm not sitting here just trying to market your product. That stuff is unbelievable for what we do. I mean, the guys have to dig holes with crowbars and all the villages and that, do it to get them 1.3 metres in the ground. It's such pretty hard work. Yeah. But once you set those posts, it's bang. Just screw it all together like a Meccano set, and off we go. Yeah. So we're way back in the early days. None of them do it now, of course. They literally had to hand make the mounting systems, and that's only 11 years ago.
You mentioned the cyclones before, and from what I understand, Fiji's just been hammered and devastated by over the last 5, 6, 7 years, I think it was, maybe. Yeah,
it's February 15 was Cyclone Winston. That was the second biggest cyclone to make landfall in the world.
Yeah, wow.
Insane. I went there a week afterwards, and they say you have life-changing experiences, but it was. You're just driving to this place. You just can't get it off the telly.
How did the systems that were already in fare after that cyclone?
Brilliantly. We rarely do roof mounts, and we did. We've done 2, I think, and one of them was in that one, and the roof peeled, and that ended up in the ocean. Yep. So we had to start again with that one. And just as a side issue, there's a really interesting thing, and they were actually changing their building when they rebuild now, is that all of the schools would have a roof come down, and the roof would continue over the veranda, and that's defect really. Well, it's defect now because it peels like an orange peel off the top, so you have a sacrificial roof and they sit over the top.
Yeah,
so
okay.
We'd be a little bit more interested, and we've got one coming up that'll be a roof mount because of where the school is that we'll need to. But normally we do ground mounts. So there was 1, 2, 3, 4 that were impacted by Cyclone Winston, and one was the panels were, this is where the highest wind point was, and they reported wind gusts of 305 kilometres an hour, which is
That's insane.
Unfathomable. And it went through the village and to the back of the array, and basically was firing timber like bullets through the array and blew all the array out. But basically all we had to do was come back and screw another array on the panels, on the mountings.
So you didn't need to do more footings for the system or anything? The same footings are still there to this day, and you just put new panels on?
We just put new panels on, basically.
Some of those holes were probably dug by hand as well, were they? Or
the best thing on site is I always show the guys now with your instruction manuals. It says with a pole driver. Look around. We got one of those, haven't we, boys? No, it's done by it's done with shovels and crowbars, and sometimes it's often sandy. So you often holding these little guys' feet, and they're down the 1.3 metres pulling sand out with their hands.
Is that how they do it?
100%. Yeah, I'll show you some video. Yeah.
And so the people that help out with the install, can you tell? Are they people from the school? Do the children get involved at all? Like, can you talk a bit about the schools and the villages surrounding them?
Sure. And I'll actually describe a project for you as well. So basically, we get how it works is depending on what location they are, we work out our logistics to get it on site. So there's usually outboard boats and ferries and trucks involved or whatever. Mm-hmm. We get it to the school, account for everything, and then we'll come in and do the job. That will include CBS Power Solutions in Fiji, who have been with us from the very start as well. Mm-hmm. And they're just fantastic. And they're a Fijian company, but they give me the best rates ever. And we've matched them up with the others and stuff over the time, or when we initially went to ask them. And we're terribly indebted to them. Great guys. So we'll get there and take the school that we did in December, the first one back after COVID, which was pretty joyful, to be honest, after you sat and watched for nearly 2 years. So you've got a school building, right? And you've got, in this case, 6 teachers' quarters. Now, the teachers usually live in the school precinct, and they'll usually be around a playing field. This one, and a lot of them are like this, they've had wiring put in 40, 50 years ago, and some of them are death traps. They're really dangerous. Some we can do make safe works on. But this one is basically rip all the wiring out, start from scratch, so that can be a bigger part of the job than actually putting the array and the inverter up.
Do you know that before you get there usually?
Yeah, they're all surveyed beforehand. Cool. So I do most of them personally. So if I'm in a region, I'll go there and see 3 or 4 other schools and we'll survey them, and we know what specs we've got in front of us. So we'll put new wiring and put new LEDs in. Each teacher's home will get 1 GPO, 1 double power point and 4 lights in there. They're happy as larks. And what happens before we get there is they'll have, most often these days, we'll have a generator of some sort, usually a small diesel generator, and that'll run an hour during the day, 2 hours sometimes during the day, and then in the night the teachers will get that for 2, 3 or 4 hours for their quality of life and do stuff. And the teachers will also go into the school in the night and do their photocopying and that sort of stuff.
Oh, okay. So they'll utilise it while it's on rather than starting it during the day unnecessarily or whatever.
It's too expensive. Yeah. So there's one school we did, they had that sort of regime for the first 3 weeks of the month. They had no power for the last week of the month, every month, because that's where their budget ran out. Just how it worked. Yeah. It's like, surely we can work that a different way. But the other thing that people don't realise either, that school, to get their fuel, had quite a long reach to get from their island to Lautoka to get the fuel. So by the time they paid the fuel in the dinghy, the taxi to get to the depot to get the fuel in 20-litre drums, get it back, load all the 20-litre drums into the thing, it actually costs them exactly the same cost in fuel and costs to get their fuel for transport. And it costs quite a bit taking these dinghies across the ocean. Yeah. In terms of fuel itself. So they actually were using twice as much fuel as they actually used for their night power.
Oh, just to get the fuel.
To get the fuel. I mean, that was an extreme example.
Jeez.
Then that Ramby school, for example, when we were doing that system, their generator failed. So they didn't have power for 3 months at all, that sort of thing. So 2 things happened. So then we put the PV in, so the school will get 24-hour power, but also the money they spend on diesel then is being converted into computers. That creates the ongoing cash flow to buy the computers. And actually that school, one of the teachers' quarters is not being used, so that'll be is converted to a computer room.
You won the Medal of Australia Award or Order of Australia Award? What was that award?
Order of Australia Medal.
Order of Australia Medal, yes. How did that come about?
I didn't know.
You didn't know you'd won it?
No. Some people...
Maybe I should check.
Yeah, no. Apparently that's how it works, is they suggest that the people who nominate you don't say. And so some people saw what I did and they nominated me, and it was apparently quite a process. So there's a bunch of people involved, and there was people in Fiji writing references.
Okay, so there's people in Fiji writing it.
Yes, yeah. They got some people over there to do it, and it was actually a guy who I know who'd watched my work, and he's quite an environmentalist, who kicked it off. So he got to my wife and got to the board members and all. Anyway, apparently it took 18 months, and then I just got a letter in mail one day. Wow, I'm not into that sort of stuff, I said. but I don't miss now. It's always after my name and so on, because I was quite surprised at the leverage that it actually does give you.
Yeah, I was going to say it must, right?
It catches people's attention, and it's opened a lot more conversations than had I not had it.
Yeah.
So, that's really the value of it. Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, it's well deserved, you know.
I don't know about that, but anyway.
Don't be modest. Come on.
Okay.
What do you and the foundation need to do to keep pushing the boundaries for the future for this thing?
I've been pushing the minister for the Pacific for some time, but they're busy people. You know, they don't get a response. So then I make photo books up and send them to him, so he couldn't miss.
So we have a minister for the Pacific here, do we? Is
that
the official title?
Yeah.
Okay.
And anyway, so he did contact me and put me on to the people at DFAT, and it's a really simple request. I only need $15 million to do the whole country, which...
Oh, if that's all you needed, you should have just said. I don't...
Oh, sorry. Can we cut the interview? We've got to talk.
No, I'm joking, unfortunately.
It does sound like a few bob, but if you look at that against, Mr. Morrison announcing $600 million for the Pacific at one point, and whatever the numbers were. But the short of it was that he'd actually put me on to this really cool senior guy at DFAT, and he grilled the daylights out of me because he'd spent time in Fiji, and they see projects put in and then fall over, and he grilled me about our maintenance strategies and so on. And when he came up trumps, he was really keen. So he said, we'll put something together and put it to the government to have a look at. There's not specific funding there, at that magnitude, but it does happen. Well, you see it all the time, various things. Do it. And really, and I think there was a bit of agreement there, you're not going to get a better story. You've got climate change, we're saving carbon, you've got kids, sustainability, empowerment of kids. The whole story
Education.
is just a great story. Anyway, so it went flat. People are busy, but we'll keep badgering down that track, and that's the real goal. Whether it's a government or it's a philanthropist who's got a lot of money, and then there's just one big shot, and it's that's their big tick off. And the thing about it too is it really is now just an engineering solution that we've got to add money to. And I've actually mapped it out how we do them. So rather than considering a school as a project, we consider a region. So Bangor Island's got 5 schools, bang, that's a project. The New South, we've got another 14 to do, and so on. And a project manager and a couple of teams. So you'd have a team of general sparkies who just go and just get up there, guys, and just wire everything up, make it red hot. Then we bring the PV guys in and the techies and get it all done. And it's just a engineering problem that's not complex now that we've got to the point of doing it. And then back to this is the ridiculous grand goal. Your original question about other countries, if that did happen, and it's not out of the question that a government or a philanthropist could put that sort of money in to do it, is that we'd also hire an individual to actually write an extremely detailed procedures manual, right down to cultural issues and logistics and government relationships, and to make sure you've got enough screws to screw the PowerPoints in on site, everything. And then this is the grand goal of It's Time Foundation, is to finish that country, and then there's your manual to any high net worth person or state government or a government. There you can do that in any developing country in the world, and there's your methods to do it. And It's Time Foundation sounds very grand, but would it be a small organisation that was advisory or had a person that sat on those boards and so on to actually guide them through those processes and maybe audit and probity and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, that's excellent. Is there anything else that sort of exists like that? Or?
No. And
I guess you would have read it by now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually driven by the game that we're playing, which is philanthropic. And that's a hard game to actually get to that sort of scale. Whereas if people were making a buck out of it, it would just work and they'd do it. Yeah.
You know what you should do? You need to get those cool schools kids to write a bunch of letters again and see if you can...
I'm tempted. Because we had some wonderful conversations around this. So it's not dead yet. We'll see how we go. And actually my local members has followed it for ages. She's in opposition. So we'll see what happens in a couple of months. There'll be certainly some conversations then.
Yeah, no doubt.
But you've got to have grand goals like that because it's... in my position, you would run out of petrol if you would just put 1 or 2 schools in all the time. Yeah. And they'll be 185 years old by the time we get to it.
But then again, I guess it's not like you're sitting around waiting for something magical to happen. You know, You've been pretty busy trying to be proactive and figure out other ways to raise funds.
Yeah.
What are some of those other ways?
Well, as you're involved in our little committee that put that concept together, the partners program is very successful and will continue to be. We launched it right in the middle of COVID, or COVID was getting into gear, and it's remained robust, which is really cool. Where basically we've sort of made it a really clearer relationship in terms of engagement and various levels of commercial value or dollar value to be various levels of partners and so on, and very much clearer commitments of engagement from us back to those organisations, and that looks like it's going to be really successful. After we set it up and moved it, I haven't really pushed it too hard since because we've been in a holding pattern of delivering on our promises. We couldn't, obviously, because of COVID, and we're now ripping in hard now to get some projects done to sort of fulfil those commitments and then move around those cycles. But I'm hopeful that when we do that, that'll continue to grow. Yeah. And it's on the website there, those lists.
Well, it looks like where are we at? We're at the website here, right? You want to guide us through? If the viewers wanted to...
Click on the business partners.
Business partners, okay, yep. Yeah, here we go. He's already got it preloaded.
So that page there is the description about how it works and the various relationships with the levels of partners. But if you click on the partner list, zoom in.
This one here, is it?
Yeah, Sean, just a comment there. So you guys are on our business partner list there as the top level, as a diamond sponsor. I'm thinking about adding to that for you guys as diamond enabling sponsor or something, because this will sound odd, but your money has slightly higher value to us than the others, and I'll explain. So that project that I just mentioned there in December that we delivered is being funded by 3 Rotary clubs, right? So let's say the project costs $4, so I'm covered for $3 for the project. Now, they're super keen that it's done by the end of whatever period, COVID withstanding, and they want to get all the details, and they want it, or some of them, not that I give them to them, but the costings down, to the last self-tapper, which is quite reasonable. It's their hard-earned cash that they're backing us in with. Getting that other one, I've got to get out there and find that dough and fundraise and go and do it. It was actually once I put my hand in my pocket for 10 grand when I'd misjudged on one of these projects. And you can't, that's not sustainable, of course. But what the Clenergy money does, it sits there as this enabling pot of money for us. So that project, bang, I've got that extra $1. I'm in there and I can put that project in. And I was just on the way to this interview, I had a call from DFAT who I'd put an application in for a $40,000 grant, and they've said I got it, which is really cool.
Cool.
So if you look at that project, because it's got a fair bit of wiring works and so on there, and costings also change too, so international shipping costs. So, Mainfreight still look after us, but they third-party ship now, so I've actually now got freight costs, which I didn't have. Mainfreight run it, don't charge me for their part and so on, so that's great. But those sorts of things, you've got those variables in there. So that project might be a $3 project. DFAT have got us covered for, $2.50 or something. Clenergy's here. I can pop that in. I can tick that off. That project's done. So in terms of comfort of delivery of what I do, Clenergy's has got my back, basically. And it's just gold. Yeah. And I can just go, flick, yes, I'm going to do that project now because I've got this little backup and I'm covered. Yeah.
Well, I suppose that's the beauty of the program, right? Because it's not just Clenergy, but really the majority of the contributors, I suppose, when you sign up to the program, is it you committing to once a month or once a quarter or something?
It varies from some of the smaller guys who are putting a small amount each month up to some that are sitting up with you guys who put larger amounts, which are exclusively for schools and so on. So we have to manage that. And then we're in the same situation. We need to report back around those, which is fantastic. Yeah, so I'm not devaluing those really important big contributions.
Oh, of course.
But as those smaller level ones grow, that gives us a similar sort of situation as well. And then they get fully engaged and we'll send them all the images and videos and all that sort of stuff so they can be part of the process. And that's the really cool thing about this business partner program, and particularly now as we're post-COVID, we can really start to drive that out there, is the little guys can get involved and be as engaged as well, even at, I think the entry point's $900 a year or something like that. Yeah. So it's $80 a month and they can be part of the process,
Which is great. I mean, what better charity to get involved in? It's for a solar company, and it's so close to home. It makes perfect sense, and for $900 a year, you can do your bit for corporate social responsibility. Yep. What else do they get if they sign it? So what's the minimum level? Is it the silver sponsorship? I think it was. Yep.
Yeah.
Actually, is it on this page? Can we show the viewers?
So if you
like? Here we go.
Yeah. So there's a cascade of engagements, but basically, everyone gets a whole bunch of assets that they can share in the experience. And the truth about these relationships with you guys, right from that very first day with Mario, nearly everyone since, there's a couple have come and gone who've come in purely for their own benefits, and it doesn't seem to last.
Yep.
It's a good story, and they get in with their heart, and they feel part of the process. So there's a really genuine part to this thing. It's not just purely an advertising opportunity. Sure. But what we're trying to push through this, and we haven't done particularly well in the past, is to actually say, hey guys, there's some really cool corporate social responsibility assets there that they can use. And some of the little guys are already doing that. They're using it on social media and websites and that sort of stuff, or generally. That's there to be used, and that is a good story. And because it's authentic, it's it's a story to share. It catches people's attention.
Yeah. So if the viewers wanted to take a look and sign up, what's the website, Rob? iitime.org. iitime.org. And then they just head over to the have a look at the content. But I think specifically for the partners program, you're at the business partners tab, right?
Give me a call. Have a look at it and give me a call.
Give me a call. Yeah, beautiful. You can talk to the man directly.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I talk too long, as you've noticed. But cool.
Rob, honestly, thank you so much for coming on Convos with Clenergy today.
Appreciate it.
It's been a real pleasure. And
the thank you goes the other way. Yeah, I mean, your thanking me is ridiculous. Yeah.
No.
You guys, the bottom line, you guys have enabled us to put in probably a quarter of the projects that we put in. Wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for, having a yarn with your dad there 11 years ago. Yeah.
Well, you've inspired us, so,
cheers. Win-win.
And to the viewers, thanks again for staying tuned. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe for more future Convos with Clenergy content. Ciao. Check out more episodes from Convos with Clenergy. Slap that subscribe button now. Cheers, cutters.